truth, the damn truth, New York's truth, the truth behind the BS. For New York, nothing at all in between. This is Bernard McGurk.
So Bernie.
This is Sid Rosenberg.
The one and only Sid.
Live, local, on it.
You never know what's going to happen.
Exclusively.
Bernie and Sid.
77 WABC.
Who is not registered? Is there anybody in here not registered? If you're not registered, get the hell out of here, okay?
Donald Trump, as we are back, hour number 2 of the Bernie and Sid show right here on legendary 77 WABC. And want to thank New York City police officer and retired detective after 21 years, Joe Sweeney, for stopping by. You know, big night, by the way, downstairs. I don't know if you know this, before we get to our next esteemed guest. Downstairs tonight, the opening of the NHL season. The Rangers host the Islanders in the first game of the season tonight downstairs. How about that?
I heard about that this morning on the Imus in the Morning program, and
excited?
No.
I think Ralph Nader is a diehard Ranger fan.
Ralph Nader is a huge Ranger fan. I know that because, well...
How do you know that? It was in his last book?
It was in his book.
He talked about going out with Mark Messier.
He campaigned in 2000 wearing a
Ranger
jersey. Yeah. A Ranger jersey. Ralph Nader is he's an American political activist, author, lecturer, attorney, noted consumer protection, a guy, environmentalist, and he ran for president a couple of times. One time, controversially, we'll talk to him about that, where supposedly he cost Al Gore the presidency. But anyway, joining us right now, he's got a brand new book, Ralph Nader does. It's called Breaking Through Power. Good morning, Mr. Nader.
Good morning, Bernie and Sid.
Hi,
yes,
Ralph.
sir.
How are you, pal?
Fine, thank you.
So tell us about the Breaking Through Power. Is it's all about your David and Goliath-like battles against big corporations, et cetera. Tell us about it.
Well, you know, people read the papers, listen to the radio, watch TV. They see all the problems in the country, the abuse of power by big business, big government, the latest being Wells Fargo, of course, but only the latest of many. There's a sort of corporate crime wave against consumers and workers and the environment, and nothing gets done. The Congress seems to be in the pocket of the big boys, and so I've written this book, this little book. It's only 140 pages, fast-moving, a lot of examples on how people break through power through our history. It never takes more than 1%, sometimes a lot less than 1% of the people, roll up their sleeves, get engaged, go to the town meetings, mobilize, march, demonstrate, whatever, to get changes underway. You know, there was a time when it was considered impossible that the Soviet Union and U.S. would get together to start cutting down on their nuclear missiles, and Reagan saw all these huge marches in New York City and Washington, figured out there were some well-dressed Republicans there, and decided to negotiate arms control treaties with the head of the Soviet Union. It considered impossible. It was considered impossible to regulate the tobacco industry or to have no smoking sections. A handful of people got that. It was considered impossible to regulate the auto companies, to put in life-saving safety devices that now we take for granted. Handful of people got that done. Why? Because they represented majority public opinion, however quiet it was. They represented the will of the people, that they want their children, for example, to grow up and be safe in cars and to breathe cleaner air and drink cleaner water and eat safer food and so on. That's what this little book is about. And the key innovation in the book, Bernie and Sid, is the citizen summons to your senators and representatives. That is, town meetings are often set up by the politicians in Washington back home. They're pretty well choreographed, and they're controlled by the politicians in the auditorium. My idea is to reverse the dynamic as befits the sovereignty of the people under our Constitution and have the citizens summon the senators and representatives one at a time to town meetings in their district around what changes they want Congress to make. And Congress is the greatest instrument for a strong, resourceful, productive democracy we have, and we have to recapture it from the corporate and other special interests.
Well, I've gotten older and gotten much more cynical, Ralph, and the book is great, and you give a lot of really good examples of how you can, in fact, get past all of that, although, unfortunately, some of those examples are from many, many years ago. And I feel like people today feel like it's almost useless. They go out there and they fight, and they have really no chance to win the battles that you're talking about. So for the cynics out there that think, hey, you know what, I'm going to go through the motions, but I'm not going to get anywhere, you would say that's not the case, right?
No, I mean, sometimes, look, if you're driving along a road and there's a big boulder, and you get out and you try to push it aside, and it doesn't move, do you give up? No, you ask other motorists to pitch in, and 6 of you can push it to the side. So sometimes when people get cynical, as you say, or they get resigned to their powerlessness, is because they haven't gotten enough neighbors, friends, coworkers on board. And what's interesting about this book, it shows that there are a lot of left-right support for real major changes in this country. I outlined in another book 24 major areas where conservatives and liberals agree, even on the minimum wage now, restoring it from its inflation-gutted level of 7.25% federal. There's left-right support. That's what the polls show, 75% to 80% support. There's big support to get rid of crony capitalism, bailing out Wall Street with your hard-earned taxpayer dollars. There's left-right support for criminal justice reform. 15 states have passed it for juvenile crimes in terms of these long sentences. And so that's what we have to do. In short, look, people are really smart about sports. You know how they call in to these sports programs?
Sure.
It's incredible.
Right.
They know their record. They know the records of the players, the history of the team. They can strategize. They can second-guess the managers and the coaches. And if they had that kind of know-how and drive in the civic arena, just a few hundred hours a year for 1% of the people representing the majority on one issue after another, focusing on the lawmakers, bingo.
It's so sad. They can tell you the shortstop's salary, but they can't tell you who the vice president is. And all the things you mentioned that you just outlined. Now, let's take it, Ralph Nader. The book, of course, is Breaking Through Power. Let's segue to the current presidential race. Ralph Nader, I know you ran for president on the Green Party ticket a couple of times, and you're supporting Jill Stein right now. And that aside, you say that the mainstream Republican and Democratic candidates, that they're indentured to the craven demands of the moneyed interests, which is a great line. But in this particular race, you have Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump. Who would you say is more indentured to these moneyed interests at this point, Hillary or Trump?
Well, Hillary, is going to give you more Wall Street and more war. She knows the ropes in Washington, to be sure. Trump is totally unpredictable. The guy can go nuts on the installment plan. Imagine him in the White House. Everything is interpreted as bruising his ego, and he lashes out, no priorities, like getting up 3 o'clock in the morning and attacking a former Miss Universe for being overweight. So, pick your poison. My approach is always vote your conscience. In New York, New York's a blue state. You can vote for a third party and still get your least worst candidate of the two major parties. But I don't believe that the two major parties own the voters. I think a competitive democracy gets us more justice. It gets us a better choice on the ballot. And this idea of spoiler is only directed to a third-party candidate, even though they all have equal rights to run for election under our Constitution. And then it becomes a scapegoating, like the Democrats scapegoated the Green Party in Florida in 2000, even though 300,000 Democrats, Bernie and Sid, 300,000 registered Democrats voted for George W. Bush and not for Gore. Blame the Green Party on that? All the shenanigans of the Secretary of State under Jeb Bush in Tallahassee, taking votes and maneuvering fake ballots and all that. You blame the Green Party for that? The 5-4 decision that selected Bush, he was never elected. You blame the Green Party for that. Gore won the national popular vote by 500,000 votes. It was taken away from him by the Electoral College, which should be repealed. You blame the Greens for that? That's why I think using the word spoiler is a politically bigoted word, and it's unworthy of our democratic system.
So you're still feeling the sting of being blamed for Al Gore's loss, clearly.
Yeah, well, it's a scapegoating. The Democrats can't believe they didn't landslide this bumbling governor from Texas who couldn't put two paragraphs together and had a terrible record. So what do? They look around. Instead of looking at themselves in the mirror, they blame the Green Party.
Okay, so you're supporting Jill Stein. Listen to what she said about Hillary and Trump. Take a listen.
On the issue of war and nuclear weapons and the potential for nuclear war, it's actually Hillary's policies, which are much scarier than Donald Trump, who does not want to go to war with Russia. He wants to seek modes of working together, which is the route that we need to follow.
So, I mean, I know, again, you're supporting Jill Stein, but the fact is people say it's a binary choice. The lesser of two evils, if you really think about it, may be Donald Trump with regards to war, according to your candidate.
No, I don't agree. I think
Thank God.
Trump doesn't know what he's doing.
Exactly.
He doesn't know what he's saying. He's totally unpredictable.
Roll the dice. Roll the dice,
and when you said that, Ralph, it's obvious that you're not thrilled with either candidate, and nor am I, by the way. But I am going to vote for Hillary Clinton because I know what she is. I don't like it, but I know what she is. I don't know what this other guy is. And to be honest, he scares the living daylights out of me. I don't know how anybody in this country is going to allow him to play with this country like it's a board game. And that's all he's done for 19 months is insult, tell us nothing. He's more unpredictable today, Ralph Nader, than he was 19 months ago.
Oh, yeah. I mean, he's totally unable to control his impulses. He has no fact base. He doesn't know anything about the job he wants to take.
Agreed.
He's a failed gambling czar who turned into a corporate welfare king that cheats all his business contact, his workers, his consumers, Trump University, his creditors, his suppliers. He uses bankruptcy to strip shareholders of any value as in his words, a competitive advantage. But, you know, in New York's going to go big for Hillary, and you can vote your conscience in New York. But I don't endorse any candidate, because when you endorse a candidate, you got to go along with everything they say. I just praise them or criticize them on the merits. And I think the Green Party platform, which I ran on, is the best platform domestically and internationally.
Okay, so what you're doing is basically, I don't root for individual players in sports anymore, Ralph Nader. I root for the team because often the players on the team disappoint me when they do something in their personal lives. You're kind of with me on that, in that you're rooting for the Green Party, but not necessarily Jill Stein.
Yeah, I mean, that's often the thing. The Green Party platform, if it was put up to a poll, and let's say it had 20 issues, 15 of those issues would get majority support, like the labor protection platform, for example, and consumer protection platform. And why don't we wage peace as part of diplomacy instead of always start out with brute force? It's getting us in huge trouble all over the world, where the adversaries are spreading into one country after another. When does our foreign policy flunk?
Well, listen, all I can say, Ralph Nader, is going back to Trump and Hillary, Hillary's just going to be more of the same. Bought and paid for, the moneyed interest and all of that stuff. I mean, she sold out the State Department. We know that. Even the Clinton Foundation, they were looking for to help Haiti. They're more interested in getting their friends contracting jobs down in Haiti than they were in actually helping the people. I mean, that is very, very corrupt. That's all I would say in response to that. And but without further ado, let me just say this. You wrote a book back in 1965, Unsafe at Any Speed. And the irony is, and which was propelled you into the national spotlight, but you have never driven a car in your life till this point, and you're 82 years old. Am I correct?
No. Of course, I have a license. I've driven cars, but I like to take public transit and cheap taxis in Washington, D.C., and become a pedestrian. And I think we ought to cut our use of cars where we can.
Right. Okay. Well, listen, Ralph Nader, we are out of time. The book is Breaking Through Power, and you are, you're a gentleman and a very intelligent man, passionate, and we thank you for appearing. Breaking Through Power from Ralph Nader on the Bernie and Sid Show. Thank you, Ralph.
Thank you.
Yeah, well, thank you. We had a great session at Barnes & Noble down in Union Square, and the book went like hotcakes.
Oh, really? Do you have another?
Get empowered.
Do you have another signing up in New York? Or are you done here?
No signing scheduled. No.
Okay.
But what we want to do is give people a real morale boost with this book, that they can make a difference, they count, they can change the locale where they live. It's been done before, and it can be done again.
Awesome.
All right. Make America great again, Ralph.
Thanks, Ralph.
Very much. Back on Bernie and Sid after this.